Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Monday, April 15th, and today is the 192nd day since October 7th. Today is also the second day of our Pilgrimage to Peace tour. I've been doing this tour personally since, I think, 2012. And this first part of the tour, I'm traveling with our staff member at Churches for Middle East Peace with Tamar Haddad from Jerusalem. And it has been such a privilege already to be meeting with church partners and the Christian community. We started yesterday at Princeton and left Capitol Hill bright and early in the morning and worshiped yesterday morning at Nassau Presbyterian Church. And then last night had this incredible event with the Perfecting Church in New Jersey. I'm now in Albany, New York. We drove a long way today, and we'll be having a gathering tonight here at a Reformed Church of the RCA, Reformed Church in America. And, you know, the conversations are hard and honest and moving about what it means to be a peacemaker and a reconciler, but not compromising in talking about truth and accountability. And also that there's a cost to pay, and that we here in the United States need to start taking responsibility, that we are complicit and participating in what's happening in Gaza. And we need to start doing better as the church and as a nation. So let me give you some updates about what's happened in the last 24 hours. Israel has communicated that they are delaying the ground invasion in Rafah. They were set to take their first steps on the ground offensive this week, but have delayed because of the Iranian retaliatory attack. There are more than 1 million people living in tents and under, makeshift homes, not even homes, but in Rafah. And so there has been a grave concern about the ground offensive. The community in Rafah continues to suffer from lack of water, sanitation. You know, the humanitarian crisis there is just on the brink. And today, Monday, the Israeli Defense Forces were going to drop leaflets as a part of throughout the city, where they would have directed residents in the tent city there to evacuate. The status of the coming ground offensive is currently unclear. Netanyahu has not communicated that he has backed off the importance of the ground invasion of Rafah. He still is communicating that there is a need to dismantle Hamas's remaining battalions, despite pressure from the United States to call off the all-out ground offensive there. It is thought that there might be a correlation between Israel's increased attacks on Rafah and the threat of further escalations with Iran. In other words, if Israel continued their attacks, there could be further escalations, with other regions of the Middle East. The White House's response to Iran's barrage this weekend has been John Kirby, the spokesperson of the Security Council, reiterated today, this morning, that President Biden is focused on preventing Iran's attack against Israel from spiraling into a broader regional conflict. This is a quote: "Just because Iran conducted this unprecedented attack, which we and our Israeli partners and other partners thwarted, doesn't mean that we should accept a constant rising escalation in the region. The president is not going to accept that he wants to see things de-escalate. The president is not going to accept that he wants to see things de-escalate," Kirby told CNN this morning. That's a direct quote. Pressed on whether or not the White House position that Israel should not retaliate, Kirby said that ultimately it's up to Netanyahu, but that the U.S. wants to see tensions de-escalate. I'm thinking that quote, either Kirby said it wrong or CNN got it wrong, because there's like a double negative in there. But anyway, Kirby said, "We respect their sovereign decision-making process. We want to see de-escalation of tensions. We do not want to see a wider war." That would be our perspective at Churches for Middle East Peace. Of course, personally, in the news that I've read in a limited way today, because of being on the road, the White House seems to be sending mixed messages. On one hand, they don't want de-escalation, but on the other hand, they're saying Israel's sovereign. They're saying we don't want there to be an offensive in response, but then they're saying to Israel, do what you want. They're saying we completely have your back, but then they're saying don't retaliate. And I don't know, is anyone else confused by what's being communicated from the White House? Because I find that kind of confusing. And I just want to say, please, President Biden, now is the time for clear and decisive leadership. Let your yes be yes. Let your no be no. Do what is right. Do what is right. Have strong and courageous leadership, moral leadership. Stop the barrage on Gaza. Hold Israel accountable. Stop exhibiting the skills that show the U.S. show the U.S. will stand with our allies, but that we will not be manipulated into a broader Middle East war that is not of our making. Hold Israel accountable for the atrocities in Gaza and demand that they remedy the famine and the humanitarian atrocities that they have created there. Demand a return to the negotiating table. Make a way forward that shows that there is a pathway towards peace. We also learned today that 2 days before Iran's attack on Israel, Iranian officials actually informed their counterparts in Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states about their plans so that they could protect their airspace. Egyptian and Saudi sources communicated that to the Wall Street Journal, adding that several Arab governments feared assisting Israel could risk fallout with Iran. Following talks with the US, Saudi Arabia and the UAE secretly agreed to share intel about the attack. Now, Israel is calling their defense over Iran a decisive victory, and they're saying it must be secured with diplomatic means, and all sides have to work to prevent escalations. I'm sorry, that's from the German foreign minister. The French President Macron said France will do all it can to avoid further Middle East escalation. The British Prime Minister Sunak said he will soon speak with Netanyahu on how to prevent escalation after the Iranian attack. The U.S. will explore additional measures to hold Iran accountable for its attacks on Israel at the UN, according to our Deputy Ambassador at the UN, Robert Wood. The U.S. Secretary of State Blinken spoke to foreign ministers in Jordan, Saudi, Turkey, and Egypt, reiterating that the U.S. is not seeking escalation in the region, but will continue to support Israel's defense. I think that's where we just have it wrong, honestly. President Biden has got to say no. He has to. I'll stop there. An Israeli official in the prime minister's office said Israel can't allow such a large attack without some kind of response, be it large or small. Just remember, this all began because there was an attack on Iran's embassy in Damascus, which the US and other allies vetoed a condemnation of at the UN Security Council. Iran's foreign minister told his British counterparts that Tehran does not favor increased tension, but will respond instantly and forcibly if Israel retaliates. Half of the ballistic missiles, between 115 and 130 that Iran launched, either failed to launch or crashed before reaching their targets. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. At least 9 Iranian missiles that breached Israel's air defense struck 2 Israel air bases, but there was not significant damage, according to ABC. U.S. forces, supported by the U.S. European command destroyers, brought down more than 80 one-way attack drones and at least 6 ballistic missiles aimed at Israel from Iran and Yemen, according to CENTCOM. President Biden convened a call with Senate Majority Leader Schumer, Senate Minority Leader McConnell, Speaker of the House Johnson, and House Minority Leader Jeffries to discuss Iran's unprecedented attack against Israel. On the call, Biden discussed the urgent need for the House to pass the National Security Supplemental, which includes $14 billion in military aid to Israel as soon as possible. It's important to acknowledge that things have shifted on Capitol Hill since the Iranian attack over the weekend. It's yet to be seen what that means, but commitments that were made late last week look very different come Monday morning. Israel's Homefront Command has lifted the closure of schools and large gatherings except at the Gaza border communities and close to Israel's northern border. Overnight on Monday, the Israel Air Force successfully intercepted a drone launched towards the territory from the east, according to the IDF. War Cabinet Minister in Israel said that regarding the war in Gaza, anyone who's asking for total and quick victories is misguided. He said that impressive defense capabilities were shown by Israel over the weekend in repelling Iran's attack. But on the other hand, we've been exercising huge military capabilities for 6 months and still failed to return the 133 hostages held in Gaza. This is important, an update on the hostages and the ceasefire. Hamas sent mediators a proposal centered around a 41-day ceasefire. Palestinian and Arab sources familiar with the negotiations said this proposal has 3 stages. All the hostages would be returned and the siege on the Gaza Strip would be lifted, according to sources. First stage would be 6 weeks. The IDF would withdraw out of Gaza and they would allow displaced Gazans to return to the north. At the same time, Hamas would search for all the hostages and gather information about them. In the second stage, an exchange for hostages for Palestinian prisoners would begin after the IDF withdraws from the territory. For every female, elderly, or wounded hostage released, 30 Palestinians would be released, prisoners. For each Israeli female soldier, 50 prisoners, and 30 of whom are serving life sentences. Captured IDF soldiers, men of conscription age, and bodies would be released in the third stage, which would then see the lifting of the siege and the beginning of the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. So that's the proposal that's currently on the table. In Gaza, nearly all of the buildings within the Gaza buffer zone established by the IDF along the border have been destroyed, according to a UN satellite center. And entry of humanitarian aid from the Gaza Strip has increased significantly, according to the US National Security spokesperson, John Kirby. Now, I think we should really investigate that number. I did some research. According to OSHA, the incoming trucks in the last few days have been on April 12th, there were 208. On April 13th, there were 107. And on April 14th, there were 143. Now, perhaps that is a significant increase. That's still less than 50% of the pre-October 7th totals. In my opinion, it's too soon to be celebrating that aid has increased significantly. Israel says the bottleneck of aid is because Palestinians have failed to manage the absorption of trucks. They're also saying Hamas has attempted to disrupt and loot supplies. I'll just remark that Samantha Power from USAID had said that that's not true. If Hamas had been redirecting aid, they'd be hearing about it. I will say Palestinians have said that Israelis have caused the bottlenecks. So there's a lot of blaming going back and forth. The reality is aid is not getting in. Malek Hania, the granddaughter of the head of Hamas's political bureau, Ismail Hania, died of her wounds after being severely wounded in an airstrike, which killed 3 of his sons in the past few days. Israeli culture minister in Israel said the reason the IDF has decreased the intensity of military operations is because Israel wants to reach a deal related to the hostages. The death toll in Gaza is at 33,797 Palestinians killed, with more than 76,465 wounded. In the West Bank, the Palestinian Red Crescent reported 1 man was killed and another wounded by gunfire in Nablus. 4 Israeli soldiers were wounded at the border with North Lebanon. The IDF says it's been attacking Hezbollah targets, and Lebanese news sources say that 9 people were wounded in South Lebanon. I wanted to close by reading a post from a friend's Facebook page last night. This was written by someone in Israel. Over the weekend during the Iranian barrage. I didn't go to sleep last night. I knew that drones were on their way. I looked out the window and I saw bright lights ascending, eerily silent, heard booms, and wondered if I should wake everyone and run to the bomb shelter. Then the air raid sirens went off, so everyone woke up, the kids disoriented, the dogs barking. We got the leash on the dog, grabbed a few bags of supplies, and headed to the shelter together with our neighbors. We're very fortunate. It's right across the hall. Observing the collection of sleepy, frightened, and anxious kids, I realized I have no childhood memories of running to bomb shelters. This is not supposed to be a normal part of childhood. I also realized that for Palestinians in Gaza, this is not just one scary, sleepless night. It is every night and daytimes too, for 6 long months, without the protection of iron domes or bomb shelters, without warning sirens. The kids in Gaza mostly don't have their own warm beds to wake up to and go back to, because most of the houses in Gaza have been destroyed or badly damaged. They might have a corner in a crowded tent or classroom. Many of these kids don't have parents anymore. Some of them don't have legs anymore. Many are hungry or malnourished. All of them have been very close to death, and too many are dead themselves. I can't even conceive of the psychological trauma every single one of the surviving children and adults is carrying. Fellow tired Israelis, can we let our experience of last night open a window into the experience of the exhausted people of Gaza? We cannot turn away. We cannot pretend we have no responsibility. It is time and past time to find a way to end this war. These are the words of Alana White Sober El Zufo, shared on Facebook.